recording start. Okay. Okay. So we are. This is March 11th. Service Binding Operator Weekly call. Welcome all. So today we can start with the topics listed in the agenda. We have three topics listed, and if anybody want to add any new topic, please do so. You can modify the document and yeah, add your names there. So we can start with the first topic for discussion, that is from Dhridi, that is to discuss about the default projection as files instead of environment variables. Dhridi,
Yes.
yeah.
So right now on service binding operator side, by default, we bind to environment variables. There were two issues on GitHub that were open related to it. The first one was, the first one talked about adding both the files, both the flags, bind as files and bind as env as true. And there's one raised by Jasper, which talks about just, default projection as files, not the environment variables. So we are going to tackle this issue first. And by default we are projecting all secret values as files. So this is to be more aligned with the spec. So let's say that the user has not specified any flag in the service binding. So in that case, by default, all the secret values will be projected as files. And if we want to change it, the user can set this as false. If we want to project it as environment variables, the user has to explicitly set this flag as false. Any questions?
One thing we need to emphasize here is that this is from user's point of view, for those who are using the series binding so far and not specifying binding as files equal false, this is going to be a kind of breaking change, because the things start to behave differently once this gets implemented. Just a heads up. So either you start now adding bind as files equal to false in your deployments in order to prepare yourself for what's coming.
So is it possible to, make environment variable as a default?
It was default so far, so we are flipping now the behavior.
Yeah, what can we keep the default as the environment variable? So I'm not sure what's the reason to change the file as default. So some of our use case still using environment variable.
So that's an effort that we are doing, where we want to be aligned with the specification for service binding. And in this specification, the default projection is a projection as file, and the environment variable is not recommended. So that's why we are doing this change. It's because in general we have the goal to be more compliant with the specification and to be fully compliant with the specification. So this change is going to make us closer to the spec. So it does not change. The binding as an environment variable is still possible, but the projection as file is going to become the default. What is your concern? And
yeah, because all of our consumption test, E2E test, and also the CRI, we already have CRI, public for end user. a CRI will need to will create the service binding CR. So with this change, our CRI need to also change, and then for each our end user need to be download the new version, and then to adopt with your change. That's my concern. So I want to avoid. So if we can keep the environment variable as default, and you can add like the binding file equal true, and then it will be very perfect for the existing customer using service binding in Code Engine or in my service using the service binding operator.
Yeah, so I'm concerned that this is not aligned with the specification, and I don't want us to be diverging from the specification. Now, I understand your concern because we are introducing a breaking change, but at the same time, we have been getting the feedback that binding with environment variables is sometimes not recommended as well. So the challenge that we have is that once you define your environment variables, you can't update them either. And you don't have control on them. You don't want to. I don't know. I mean, is it? Will it be for you possible for you to explain why you prefer environment variables? Is there a strong preference for environment variables from your side, or is it mainly because the existing customer resource? They are
yes, mainly for existing customer. Existing user are already using environment variable. So I think we can support file, but I want to make a smooth.
So you can
change.
still project as environment variables.
Yeah,
it will still be possible, but you will need to make it explicit into your customer resource.
Okay.
You just have to set this flag as false.
Yeah, I know that, but that means our CRI is in customer's laptop, so customer need to download and make sure to work with the new spec. So that's mainly my concern. So if only the test, I think we can. Test case we can contain that, but ask customer to download the new CRI. Otherwise, the service binding not working. So seems like not very friendly for end user. Okay. I just want to raise my concern, but if you want to change that, I think we have to go with this way.
So I think this spec compliance is going to introduce some more, backward incompatible changes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so if there are more comments on this, so we can probably comment on this particular issue 893.
And Dhriti, will there be a way for us to introduce the change into phases? Because I'm worried that we are introducing a breaking change, but we are not giving the time for every adopter of the service binding operator to adopt those changes.
Well, but this is something which is coming in a following release. The release is not going to happen tomorrow, so this is going to happen in 3 weeks or so.
Yeah, but it's still not a lot of time, and consumer will not necessarily know that they need to update their custom resource.
I mean, for Zhu, like once we have this change, they're gonna still keep using the old version 0.5 until they are ready to move to 0.6, right?
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, but there is a Yeah, but in general, you have a deprecation policy.
Sure. I think if we have to go this way, so we can we can do some change in CLI. So I will communicate with team offline.
Let us know and feel free to reach out to us.
Sure.
Okay, if there are more comments, we can put it on this particular issue, GitHub issue. Apart from this, let's move on to the next topic. Beju, can I move on to the next topic?
Yeah, please continue with that second topic.
The next topic is a bug report template for GitHub issues. So this is a bug report template. I have added a bug report template for GitHub issues. So now whenever you would be creating a new issue, you would have a template over here. This is what the template would look like. These are the questions that you would have to answer. What is the environment, Minikube or OpenShift? The bug that you are going to report, it is for which environment, Minikube or OpenShift? What is the SBO version that you are using? And what are the steps to reproduce that issue? What is the expected behavior and what is the actual behavior? If you think that there could be more questions, or if there are anything that you want to add over here, please review this PR and let me know. I'll put this in the doc.
Yeah, that's
Do you have a field for doc text there in the template? If not, can you please include this in?
Sri, can you repeat that? Doc text.
Yeah, supposing if a issue or a bug needs documentation, it has a documentation impact, then the concerned person can give the applicable doc text to it. What is the cause and what is the consequence and what is the fix?
So wouldn't that be resolved in the expected behavior, right? Let's say that there is something wrong with let's say, for an example, in the docs. So let's say, yeah.
I don't think documentation is a behavior thing, right? We could have a separate section.
What I had observed in other things, for example, login or pipelines, is that they usually have that field and SMS kind of they put it, and then from there we pick it from the Bugzilla issues and we put it for RNs or known issues or wherever it is applicable. So I'm not really sure, because I've seen what I observed. I'm just letting you know. If it's gonna help you, then maybe you can put it for applicable things.
Sri, can you comment on this PR, and can you about what the question should be, and an example of where you have seen that? It would actually help me.
Definitely, I will do that. Yeah, thank you.
Also,
can you just track me the link?
Okay, just one thing. Do we need a separate issue? I mean, template for reporting documentation specific issue? I mean, issues. Yeah. Is that?
Can you please repeat that question?
Okay, this template is to report any general bug report about the issues in the system, right? Do we need a separate template to report any documentation specific issues? Is that going to be helpful? Or?
I would say if you have one similar question # column for the doc test, I think that would suffice. Because whether it is a system, if it has a doc impact, it will be mentioned there, right? Why to have two separate things? And if it is really required and we feel that it is validated, then we will have a similar issue in our own documentation Jira that is related to app services, and we will raise it within the team, and we'll make sure it gets documented.
Okay.
Yes, thank you. Griti, you can Slack me the link, and I will comment and get back to you with the example also. Okay.
Shri, it's on the team
Agenda is it? Okay, I'll take it. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay. So this is all that I wanted to present. Is there anything else, Beju?
No, thanks. If anybody else has any comments, or we can move on to the other item, that is Predrag can give a more details. We discussed this topic about the spec compliance at length. Stephen presented that in the last meeting, but I think we can go a little more into the details, around that. So Predrag, can you help us there?
So, as we discussed already today, we are taking a number of actions to get us closer to the spec. Eventually, supporting the spec on the API level as well. So you have like two levels of support. One is the feature level, so where we practically more or less in our API we ensure that everything what spec is stating is supported, or like the behaviors are as the spec is expecting. In this particular example, so default. So we as an implementation, we give opportunity to users to inject bindings either through environmental variables or through files. So far, the default was the environmental variables, but the spec is only about injecting in bindings as files. In order to like move us closer to like prepare, consumers or user of the service binding operator to that date, we need to do it like at least in two phases. The first to align us on a feature level, so that the expected behaviors from the operator are very aligned to what the spec is saying. In this particular today's conversation, it's to default ourselves to the injecting bindings as files. Once this is done, and some other things as well, then we're gonna start working on supporting and consuming the spec API as such. So giving people opportunity to step from our API to the spec API, and eventually at the GA date, we're gonna drop support for our API, or maybe keep it. Depending on the feedbacks, and so the use cases which are maybe not part of the spec API, not really possible to push through as extensions, but we need to see that. But our plan is to eventually have a service binding operator only supporting the spec API and a number of extensions of that spec. Stefan, did I miss anything? You're muted.
Sorry. No, I think it's good. It's a good summary, and it explains well the situation.
I think the API group name change will be one of the last thing that we are going to do, right?
Well, not. I mean, we need to, in parallel to API, what we have, we're going to start supporting the spec API, and starting to support it like, bigger and bigger portion of spec API in parallel to the API what we have. So we are not going to rename anything. So our API will remain under the same group API name. So for the people who don't want to move for some time, but we're gonna warn people early enough that if we see that the old use cases which are in the spec are enough for the consumers, that we're not really seeing any demand for something which cannot be implemented as an extension of the given spec. So then we're gonna warn people early enough that we're gonna drop support for the current API and remain only with the spec API. But at some point in time, we're gonna service binding operator will watch and understand two APIs.
Okay, so that means at the same time we are going to have two CRDs present in the operator.
Right.
Okay. Depending on the extension, there will be more than two. Yes.
I mean, it will be important to understand, the discussion on the spec side, as far as I remember, is still not finished regarding the group API name, because they need to find out some domain. And I think before they decide about that, it doesn't make sense to me that we really start supporting and delivering that API, because this is going to be subject to the change anyway. So I assume, given that the spec wants to release 1.0 version by the end of this month, I assume they're gonna come up with some group API pretty soon.
Yeah, they're waiting for formal inclusion into the Kubernetes that 6, and I think that only going to happen. Right now, they're working on a new charter for that SIG. Those things need to be completed. Then only they'll get a complete integration with that SIG. So afterwards only they can use that new API group. Yeah, that's my understanding.
Yeah. And I'm sorry about like a necessary complication to anybody who is using. I really appreciate people using service binding operator in so early phase, but we are all aware that this is very alpha API and subject to changes, and like we need to also move us fast. And yeah, I'm really, it's unfortunate sometimes. Like we had similar situation, like recently we needed to change the group API name, which basically technically means it's a fully different API you need to support. Yeah, but that's the kind of disadvantage of being like an early adopter. We tried really to involve people early enough and to warn them. Yeah, but sometimes we need to do such kind of cuts, unfortunately.
Yeah. Okay. We don't have any more agenda in our list, but if there is somebody want to discuss any specific topic, we can. Otherwise, we can wind up the call.
I have a question. Please, pardon me if it sounds silly. It's all new to me, so I'm just asking questions. So I see 3 issues, 887, 893, and there is one thing that says it's breaking, changes are coming in. So the first 2 issues, will they be having any documentation impact? Should we be mentioning them in the documentation for the users?
Can you please share the links to issues in the chat? Just to.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I will do that. Give me a second. Okay. So this is the issue which talks about projecting the default file instead of variables.
So there would, I think, yes, there would be some doc changes required for this.
Okay.
I mean, at least we should mention that by default we're projecting as files and not environment variables as files. That's it.
Okay. So are we going to mention any usage of that? How it is going to help the users, or why we are doing this?
No, I don't think that has to be mentioned in the doc, but just a sentence probably would be beneficial. Like the default behavior is injecting as files. Predrag, Steven, any comments? Is this all right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Wonderful. So this is the second link. That's actually.
Yeah, the second link.
It's also around the same issue.
Yeah.
Almost.
That was discussed today. Yeah.
Yeah. So I wanted to know how different are these two from each other, or how related are these two?
So I mentioned this in the beginning. The first one was raised, and it talks. It's a bit different. It says that bind as files. The projection should be both as files and environment variables. A part of it is 893, which 893 just states that the default behavior should be just as files, which is what we are doing right now, which is the behavior that we want eventually. We are not doing the default projection as environment variables. So 893 is what we are looking at, Sri.
Okay, okay. So this is like the final version or
Yeah.
decision,
Yes.
how it's gonna be.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, great. And this breaking change, should we be mentioning it again in the documentation, or is it internal, or how is it?
I don't think that this needs to be mentioned in the documentation. Just one sentence or one line that the default behavior the default projection is as file. Maybe a sentence we can construct it in a better way, but just one
Okay.
line, I think that should be enough.
Okay. Okay. So for all these three issues, it's just that one statement that default projection is going to be ingested as file.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. We'll refine that later.
Yeah. Predrag, is this okay?
Yeah, yes. I mean, Shri, as a part of each of PR, change something and some things needs to be documented, like the documentation changes are part of that PR as well. So if you like, we will definitely like to have you reviewing that parts of the PR once ready. I mean, the question is in general, not only for this particular PR. Would you like to be part of that?
Yes, please. That's gonna sharpen my sauce, right, from the product knowledge. I would welcome that. Thank you very much.
Predrag, I think she's talking about the OpenShift console, OpenShift documentation, because that is where the things where in the console there's a documentation about service binding operator, right? In the dev console documentation.
But only from the view of topology view, how to bind, but not that. So, but we have another source of documentation which lives together
user
with
guide,
the
right?
project. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's one user guide, so I'm also focusing on that.
Okay.
Yeah. So my question is for both of them. So when you answer, maybe you can divide it. One is for OpenShift and one is for SBO, because I'm very new to this. So I won't be able to, get into finer details, or I might overlook easily. So experts like you really help me, pinpoint it clearly. So I really would like that help from all of you. Thank you very much.
Okay, I think we are through the topics. Thank you all for joining the call. That's it.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you.